So you want to read Plato. Actually, that was a bit assumptive of me. Maybe your professor is forcing you to read Plato. Maybe that person you matched with on Tinder likes philosophy, and you want to connect over something. Maybe you want to get into philosophy, and Plato is usually the first place to start. Either way, Plato is pretty different from the usual non-fiction you'll read for academic purposes. So this video is designed to help new readers tackle a Platonic dialogue and not get lost. But don't worry, we've all gotten lost at some point with Plato anyway. I'm sure if you're taking a class, you've gone over the history surrounding Plato, but in case you haven't, here's a quick rundown for your purposes. In the history of Western philosophy, the first sorta group of philosophers were known as the pre-Socratics. Not much work has survived from this group, so usually we have to rely on third-party accounts to know all about them. Then comes Socrates, who didn't write anything down himself. And then we have Plato, who did write a lot. So all things considered, Plato is usually considered a great place to start actually reading philosophy. Not only is he chronologically at the beginning, a lot of later philosophical works will refer to past works. But with Plato, I don't think I've personally come across that with him. So you need no prior philosophical knowledge to hop in. Now Plato writes in a dialogue format, essentially meaning that he has a cast of characters who have their lines and talk to one another. Kinda like reading a screenplay or Shakespeare. In all Platonic dialogues, except for maybe one, Socrates is featured as a character. Not only that, Socrates is most likely going to be the main character. And furthermore, Socrates is usually used as a mouthpiece for Plato's own ideas. So if your professor gives you an essay and asks you about what Plato believes, quote Socrates, don't quote some other character like Thrasymachus or something. Now you might be wondering, if Plato is essentially using Socrates to convey his own ideas, how much of these ideas were actually endorsed by Socrates? This is actually a pretty controversial and widely debated topic among scholars, so I don't think if you're a beginner you'd be expected to know right off the bat what the answer is. Regardless, to know what Plato believes, you'll just want to look at what Socrates is saying. Now these dialogues generally follow a pretty familiar pattern. First, there's a bit of story involved, setting up how these characters meet and what's on their mind. Usually the non-Socrates character will have some sort of issue that relates to a larger topic. In the dialogue called the Euthyphro, for example, the character of Euthyphro meets Socrates in a courthouse and tells Socrates that he's prosecuting his father for killing someone. He believes that his actions are pious, leading Socrates to ask what he exactly means by pious. What is piety? And then that's where the dialogue really kicks off. As a reader, you'd want to identify what the general topic of the dialogue or section is about. And hey, there's no harm in Googling what the overall topic is. There's no spoiler warnings or anything like that. Although I will say it may be beneficial for you to fish out that general topic from the dialogue itself. It'll usually appear fairly early on and asked by Socrates. So after Socrates asks the general question, such as what is piety or what is love, then the other character gives their conventional answer to that question. They try to define the concept. This initial definition given by the other person is most likely wrong, according to Plato. So the character of Socrates is going to break it down. Now he breaks down the definition by employing the Socratic method. And the Socratic method is not just asking a bunch of random questions like some people believe. Rather, it's to get the other person to agree to a premise that contradicts their original assertion. I know that's a lot, so here's an example. Let's say that I define charity as giving away a lot of money. Socrates asks me if I believe charity benefits the poor. I say yes, I agree. Socrates then asks if giving away lots of money to the rich benefits the poor. I say no. We then conclude that giving away lots of money to the rich does not benefit the poor and therefore isn't charity. Therefore, I'm in a contradiction where I can't say my original assertion that charity is giving away lots of money and that charity benefits the poor, because my original definition allows for situations where giving away lots of money doesn't benefit the poor. So either my original definition is wrong or Socrates' premise that charity benefits the poor is wrong. Usually in these dialogues, Socrates is always right. So his premise holds and will continue to influence the further discussion. And that's a general oversimplification on how these Platonic dialogues work. One person says something, Socrates breaks it down, and then something new comes out of that discussion and acts as a new starting point, kinda like a checkpoint in a video game. When reading these dialogues, I recommend numbering what you believe to be these checkpoints in the dialogue. For example, in the Euthyphro, when Socrates asks what is pious and impious, Euthyphro gives his response and that can be our first checkpoint. A Socratic method breakdown then occurs, leading Euthyphro to revise his answer. We could then number this as our second checkpoint, and then we go on and on like this until we reach the end of the dialogue. That's essentially how I read Platonic dialogues, and if you ever find yourself lost in the sauce, then I recommend numbering these starting points while also paying attention to the back and forth resulting in that new starting point as well. One more thing before we wrap up, but in case you aren't bound by your professor and have free reign to choose what specific dialogue to start with, I'd personally recommend getting one of these dialogue collections that follow the death of Socrates. These dialogues are all super short and fairly simple, which will help you get acquainted with Plato's writing style. Anyways, I hope this video helped you out in some way with reading Plato, whether you're about to jump in or have jumped in and are having some problems. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other philosophy content and be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.